We all know that 50 Cent has always been all about that life.
How much you think it'll cost to kill somebody?
The crazy beef between 50 Cent and Ja Rule in the 90s fizzled out not with the shooting of 50 Cent as many like to think. It actually ended with the still unsolved murder of Daryl Hamo Baum, the guy who shot 50 Cent in 2000.
Did you ever find out who did it?
Yeah, I knew who did it shortly after.
Yeah.
The guy who actually shot me is dead.
Did 50 Cent have something to do with Baum's death? Well, in this interview, he revealed stuff that made everyone revisit the end of his Many Men video for clues.
And I'm gonna take the same kind of money that you would get and get it to the homies. And go shoot the you got. Couple times.
And what we found in this story is not just how much of a gangster 50 was and is, but also how much bullying goes on in the music industry and how bad you have to be to survive. Did 50 Cent kill Daryl Baum?
I dedicate this fight to my brother, Daryl Baum, who died.
Daryl Baum, also known as Hamo, was a feared figure in Brooklyn, known for his ties to the streets. His death in 2000 left a lot of people talking, especially because of his rumored involvement in the shooting of 50 Cent just a few weeks earlier. When you dive into 50 Cent's Many Men music video, it's hard not to wonder if there's a hidden message about Baum's fate. The video shows 50 Cent being ambushed, but surviving the attack, much like what happened in real life. As the video closes, 50 gets his revenge on those who tried to take him out. While it's never directly said, fans can't help but speculate that this ending might be hinting at Baum's own demise. The timing, the story, and the raw emotion in the video all add to the mystery. Was 50 Cent sending a message about what really went down? It's a question that's still up in the air, fueling the legends surrounding both the rapper and the life he left behind in the streets. So no one who knows their history would put it past 50. Because best believe, 50 was about that life back in the 80s and 90s.
I think 50 is as authentic as they come.
He's a bona fide street gangster.
And like many kids growing up in Queens, he had almost no other choice but that life. You see, he was born on July 6, 1975, in the tough neighborhood of South Jamaica, Queens, New York City. His early years were far from the fame and fortune he would later achieve. Raised by his single mother, Sabrina, who dealt drugs to make ends meet, Curtis was introduced to the gritty reality of street life at an early age. The world he grew up in was harsh, filled with the dangers and temptations of the drug trade. And it wasn't long before these experiences shaped his path. When Curtis was only 8 years old, his life took a tragic turn. His mother was murdered in a mysterious fire, leaving him without the one person who had guided him through the rough streets. After her death, Curtis was taken in by his grandparents, who did their best to provide a stable home for him. But the pull of the streets was strong. The absence of his mother and the need to survive pushed Curtis toward a life filled with risk and crime. By the time he was 12, Curtis was already dealing drugs. He managed to keep his illegal activities hidden from his grandparents by pretending to participate in after-school programs. This double life allowed him to continue his dealings while appearing to be just another kid trying to make it in the world. Curtis quickly learned the ins and outs of the drug business, gaining a reputation for his street smarts and sharp business sense. The mid-1980s were a dangerous time in South Jamaica, Queens. The crack epidemic had the neighborhood in its grip, leading to a surge in violence and crime. Curtis found himself deep in the middle of it all, running with a crew and building a name as a young hustler. His involvement in the drug trade introduced him to some of the most dangerous figures in the criminal underworld. Curtis's first real run-in with the law came when he was caught with a gun and drug money at his high school.
In high school, he was like in the 9th grade, and he got caught through the metal detectors. But he was young, so they suspended him from school and they had to release him.
The incident was a wake-up call, but instead of walking away from the life, Curtis became even more cautious and strategic in his actions. He knew the risks, but the rewards kept him in the game. By the early 1990s, Curtis had become a recognized figure in the South Jamaica drug scene.
From 94, 95, he's one of the biggest, youngest drug dealers.
He was no longer just a small-time dealer. He was moving larger quantities of drugs and making serious money. But as his success grew, so did the attention from law enforcement. In 1994, Curtis's luck ran out. On June 29th, he and his 16-year-old accomplice, Taisha Dowse, were arrested for selling cocaine to an undercover NYPD officer. The bust revealed just how deep Curtis was into the game. A few weeks later, on July 19th, police raided his home, finding more drugs, packaging materials, and a starter gun. The back-to-back arrests were a major hit to Curtis's operation. Facing serious charges, Curtis pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 to 9 years in prison. However, he managed to avoid a long stint behind bars by spending only 7 months in a youth boot camp. This brief time away didn't change his course, but it marked a turning point in his life that eventually led him from the streets to stardom. It is no doubt that 50 Cent was really about life, and being in a gang around that time was a big deal because of how dangerous it was. The 1980s were a wild time for New York City. The city was struggling with a weak economy, high unemployment, and crumbling infrastructure. These tough conditions created the perfect storm for crime and gang activity to flourish. And then came the crack cocaine epidemic, hitting the streets like a tidal wave and completely transforming the city's underworld. Suddenly, some of the most infamous gangs in history were born. Crack cocaine took off in the early 1980s, flooding the streets with a cheap, addictive high. The demand was off the charts, and so were the profits. This new drug trade attracted a ruthless kind of criminal, willing to do whatever it took to control the market. Violence escalated as gangs battled over the lucrative drug corners, turning neighborhoods into war zones. But there was one specific gang that we should talk about to explain how 50 Cent got his reputation, and links us back to the rumors that he might have killed Baum. I'm talking about the Supreme Team gang, based in South Jamaica, Queens, led by Kenneth Supreme McGriff. They were notorious for their brutal enforcement tactics, from kidnappings to cold-blooded murders. McGriff built a crack empire, making the Supreme Team one of the most powerful gangs in the city. As the 1980s ended and the 1990s began, New York was in the grip of unprecedented gang violence. The crack epidemic was at its peak, with murders skyrocketing and streets turning into battlegrounds. The impact was devastating. Neighborhoods were terrorized, families lived in fear, and the social fabric of the city was torn apart. It was a dark chapter in New York's history, one that left scars that would take years to heal. The late 1990s in Queens, New York were anything but peaceful. The streets had their own rules, and power often came through fear and force. Among the most feared was Kenneth Supreme McGriff, a drug lord who didn't just control the trade, but also the people around him. Supreme wasn't just another dealer. He was a kingpin whose name was enough to make folks nervous. Supreme's rise started back in the 1980s when he created the Supreme Team, a gang that ran the crack trade in South Jamaica, Queens, with an iron fist. These guys were known for their brutal methods, keeping everyone in line and holding the neighborhood in a tight grip. Supreme was a sharp leader, and his ability to maneuver through the dangerous world of drug trafficking made him a force to be reckoned with. As 50 Cent began his rap career, he was well aware of the power players in his neighborhood, especially people like Supreme. Most upcoming artists were careful not to get on the wrong side of such influential figures, but 50 Cent wasn't one to shy away. He had stories to tell and wasn't about to let fear hold him back. Tony Yayo, a close friend and fellow G-Unit member, remembers how tense things were in Queens back then.
I'm from an ill era, and I don't try to front or glorify this shit, but every nigga we looked up to was a drug dealer. It wasn't no gangs back then. But now it's glorified as gang.
In fact, for old heads like Tony Yayo, this era ain't got nothing on the old era, especially in Queens.
Tell these little niggas they ain't gang. They don't give a f who they are. They smoke you, nigga. Same way they wild in LA, they'll strip out here in the Bronx, or Brooklyn, or wherever it is, Queens, Staten. You ain't gang, up it. 12 years old. To me, it's worse.
But in all this, while many feared Supreme, 50 Cent wasn't one of them. This boldness led to moments that would shape his path to success. When 50 Cent's Ghetto Quran was leaked in 2000, it was a game changer. The song, part of his debut album, Power of the Dollar, called out several street legends, including Supreme. Naming names like that wasn't something people did lightly, and it didn't go unnoticed.
Because once niggas know your background, and you really do half of the things you rap about, because half of these rappers is lies.
The buzz around the Ghetto Quran spread fast. Everyone in Queens was talking about how 50 Cent dared to mention such powerful figures in his song. According to Tony Yayo, while folks knew these stories, hearing them in a track from someone who lived that life hit differently.
That's the homie. It's love. I show everybody love. If you a real nigga, I'm gonna show you love. That's it.
It was a bold move that got 50 Cent noticed, but it also made him a target. Supreme, known for his ruthless reputation, wasn't too happy about being called out. The tension between him and 50 Cent began to rise. Yet despite the danger, 50 Cent refused to be intimidated. There were moments when this tension was on full display. One time at Carl Michael's gas station, a local hangout, Supreme rolled up in his Volvo and everyone felt the tension. Kev Brock, a streetwise guy, even warned them to avoid scratching Supreme's car, knowing it could spark violence. But 50 Cent stayed cool, showing he wasn't scared.
That's when I knew 50 didn't give a f. And that's when I knew Supreme didn't like 50.
Another incident that stands out was when Supreme tried to belittle 50 Cent by rubbing his head. Instead of backing down, 50 Cent rubbed Supreme's head right back, surprising everyone.
You know what 50 did? Yeah, my nigga.
Do it back, yeah.
Yeah, my nigga. Oh, you know what the block did?
Yeah, that's what
It's ironic that the gangster life gave 50 Cent power, but it almost led to his downfall. The twist? He may have been connected to the same people who shot him. Once the hunter, he became the hunted. People are curious to know who Supreme was in the gang and why he was feared. Kenneth Supreme McGriff and 50 Cent. Kenneth McGriff, born and raised in Queens, was a local guy who took a different path early on. Known as Supreme, McGriff wasn't just another hustler. He was smart, ambitious, and had a vision. Seeing the chaos in the drug trade, he saw an opening to take control and make a name for himself. Teaming up with some teenagers from the 5% Nation, McGriff formed the Supreme Team. They set up shop at the Baisley Park Houses, a public housing project that quickly became the heart of their operations. Their main focus was on selling crack cocaine, a drug that was exploding in popularity and destroying communities at the same time. With Supreme leading the way, and his nephew Gerald Prince Miller as his right-hand man, the Supreme Team didn't take long to spread its influence. McGriff's leadership was a mix of smart strategy and ruthless enforcement. He knew how to keep things organized and created a structure that kept the top dogs far away from the street-level action. The Supreme Team's rise was fast and fierce. By 1987, they were pulling in over $200,000 a day from their drug empire. Their operation was slick, with layers of dealers to reduce risk and coded language to keep things under wraps. Violence and intimidation were part of their playbook, making sure rivals and anyone who stepped out of line were dealt with quickly. To keep their empire safe, McGriff and Miller used armed bodyguards and lookouts with two-way radios, making it tough for the cops to get close. The Supreme Team's grip on the drug trade was tight, and their brutal reputation kept them on top. But their success couldn't stay under the radar forever. Law enforcement started paying serious attention to the Supreme Team. Even though the cops tried to crack down on them, the gang's sophisticated setup helped them slip through the cracks and keep their reign of terror going. As the Supreme Team's empire grew, so did the spotlight on them from law enforcement. In 1987, Kenneth Supreme McGriff hit a major bump in the road when he was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for drug trafficking. This was a huge setback for the gang, but it wasn't the end of their story. With McGriff locked up, his nephew Gerald Prince Miller took over as the gang's leader. Miller quickly showed he was no pushover. He boosted the gang's security and stepped up their ruthless tactics to keep their grip on the streets. Under Miller's rule, the Supreme Team kept rolling, but cracks started to show within their ranks. The stress of running such a big and violent operation led to lots of internal strife. Loyalty was always in question, and suspicion was high. Miller didn't tolerate any hint of disloyalty. In 1987 alone, Miller and McGriff ordered at least 8 murders to deal with anyone they saw as a threat. Miller also played the system smartly by getting help from corrupt officials. He worked with New York State Parole Division employees, like parole officer Ina McGriff and Secretary Ronnie Younger, who fed the gang crucial info like rival addresses and parolee details. This intel was used to track down and eliminate threats, including Henry and Isaac Bolden, who were suspected of robbing Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, an ally of the gang. During a raid, handwritten notes with the Boldens' addresses were found, exposing the gang's reach and the corruption within the parole system. The Boldens were later killed, with Isaac getting shot near his mom's place. Another example of their ruthless tactics came when Ina McGriff tipped off the gang that James Page, a Supreme Team member, was talking to the authorities. Even from prison, McGriff ordered Page's murder. Piniella, the gang's head of security, took care of it, showing just how far the gang would go to maintain control and exact revenge. Despite their efforts to stay one step ahead, law enforcement was closing in. By late 1987, an NYPD and FBI task force hit several Supreme Team spots with search warrants. Though the gang had been tipped off and managed to hide a lot of drugs and money, the raid still led to the seizure of weapons, narcotics, and key documents. After the raid and his arrest, McGriff decided to shut down the gang's operations temporarily. This break was a strategic move to avoid more legal trouble, highlighting the mounting pressure on the Supreme Team. In the spring of 1989, Gerald Prince Miller got out of prison and wasted no time getting the Supreme Team back on its feet. Eager to take back their power, Miller quickly regrouped his crew and took control of 2 of their most profitable drug spots. The Supreme Team was up and running again, and their operations were slicker than ever. Miller brought together key players like Arroyo as his second in command, Hunt as his bodyguard, and Ernesto Piniella as head of security. With this new lineup, the gang's daily earnings quickly soared back to $10,000, and their grip on the drug trade was firmly restored. From December 1989 to March 1990, law enforcement was keeping a close eye on the gang through wiretaps. The Supreme team operated out of David Robinson's mother's apartment in Baisley Park. This was where they collected money from their spots and struck deals with suppliers who had connections in Colombia. At the apartment, the cocaine was turned into crack, packaged up, and then handed off to street-level dealers. The gang's operations were running like a well-oiled machine, but their comeback didn't go unnoticed by the cops. As the Supreme team reasserted itself, they also went back to their violent ways. Evidence showed that they were involved in multiple murders, both before and after their 1987 shutdown. They kept their alliance with Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, using violence to eliminate threats and keep their dominance. One of the most shocking events was when Pookie, a member of the Supreme team, set up an ambush for Colombian cocaine suppliers. The plan involved other team members like C-Just, Puerto Rican Righteous, and Big C. The suppliers were beaten and strangled, and their bodies were dumped in different places. Eventually, their violent actions caught up with them, leading to their downfall. By 1996, the law enforcement crackdown was in full force. A detailed case against the Supreme team laid out their wide-ranging criminal activities. Despite their attempts to stay hidden, the authorities were closing in. The Supreme team's downfall came in February 2007 when Kenneth Supreme McGriff was convicted in federal court. He was found guilty of racketeering, 2 murder-for-hire charges, drug trafficking, and illegal financial dealings with drug money. With overwhelming evidence against him, McGriff was sentenced to life in prison without parole, putting an end to the Supreme team's reign of terror. Despite his criminal life, Supreme had big dreams of going legit and breaking into the entertainment world. He saw hip-hop as a way to clean his money and make his wealth look legitimate. Supreme's chance came when he joined Murder Inc., a label founded by Irv Gotti. Murder Inc. was home to major hip-hop stars like Ja Rule and Ashanti. Supreme's close ties with Ja Rule and Irv Gotti helped him make a name for himself in the music industry. He invested in Murder Inc., which was already making waves with stars like Ja Rule and Ashanti. Supreme figured this was a smart way to launder his dirty money and make himself look legit. But just as things were heating up, 50 Cent came onto the scene. 50 had his own plans and wasn't shy about stirring things up. He started poking around, getting involved, and causing trouble for Supreme and the label. With 50 Cent's reputation for stirring the pot and going after anyone who crossed him, this new development was about to shake up everything, and Supreme had to do something about it. Why did 50 Cent get jumped?
Why'd the guy shoot you 9 times? Was it drugs or something?
He was paid to do it.
He was paid to do it?
Yeah.
Who would want to shoot you?
Why were you targeted?
You're such a good guy.
This is my past.
When 50 Cent got shot in 2000, Ja Rule was one of the first names people threw around as a suspect. Their beef was notorious, with both rappers taking shots at each other in their music and interviews. Ja Rule and 50 Cent had a very public feud, filled with diss tracks and personal jabs. Given their bitter rivalry, it wasn't surprising that some folks immediately wondered if Ja Rule might have been behind the attack. The drama between them was so intense that people naturally connected the dots. The feud between 50 Cent and Ja Rule kicked off with a chain-snatching incident during a video shoot in Queens. Ja Rule's chain was stolen, and he suspected that 50 Cent was connected to the thief.
I just see me communicating with someone who actually
robbed him.
And he misinterpreted the conversation because he see me laughing and us talking, but he didn't know I grew up with the guy.
This suspicion sparked a deep grudge that quickly grew into one of the most infamous rivalries in hip-hop history. 50 Cent, eager to establish himself as the toughest rapper from Queens, dropped a diss track called Life's on the Line in 1999. In the song, he mocked Ja Rule and referenced the chain robbery, taking direct shots at Ja Rule's credibility. Despite efforts by Supreme to mediate, 50 Cent was determined to take down Murder Inc. and Ja Rule. In later years, in 2002, 50 Cent dropped his mixtape, Guess Who's Back, featuring the track Wanksta. The song quickly became a hit and was seen as a direct diss aimed at Ja Rule. The buzz from Wanksta helped launch 50 Cent into the spotlight, setting him up for his debut album, Get Rich or Die Trying, which came out in 2003. The album was a huge success, selling over 12 million copies worldwide and firmly establishing 50 Cent as a major player in rap. One of the standout tracks on the album was Back Down. This song was a direct hit at Ja Rule and Murder Inc., with its fierce lyrics and powerful beat, making it clear that 50 Cent was in full attack mode. Lines like, "You sing for hoes and sound like the Cookie Monster," took jabs at Ja Rule's singing style, while other verses questioned his street cred and toughness. Back Down quickly became a favorite among 50 Cent's fans and dealt a heavy blow to Ja Rule's image. Ja Rule and his crew hit back with their own diss tracks, including Loose Chain. In this song, Ja Rule took shots not just at 50 Cent, but also at Eminem and Dr. Dre. He questioned 50 Cent's authenticity and even accused him of being a snitch. Ja Rule didn't hold back, taking the feud to a personal level by attacking Eminem's family, which only made things more heated. But when it all began before 50 took off, Supreme didn't take 50 Cent seriously. seriously. He saw him as just another rapper trying to make a splash and told him to back off from Ja Rule. Supreme thought 50 Cent's antics could mess with his money from Murder Inc. As a shrewd businessman, he knew any threat to his cash flow could be a big problem. But 50 Cent wasn't about to back down. He saw Supreme as both a rival and someone he wanted to impress. The clash between them heated up as 50 Cent's drive for fame and power bumped heads with Supreme's control and influence. Their early interactions were full of tension. Supreme kept a close watch on 50 Cent. Knowing he was more than just an annoyance, he was a real threat to his well-established world. Things took a serious turn with E-Money Bags, a rapper connected to both Supreme and 50 Cent. E-Money Bags had given cash to a woman working for Supreme, but when he asked for it back, Supreme blew him off. This only added more fuel to the fire between Supreme and 50 Cent. Things heated up further when his beef with Ja Rule and Murder Inc. intensified. During a heated encounter with the Gotti brothers and their crew, 50 Cent was brutally stabbed by Murder Inc. associates. Though the attack left him with serious injuries, it only strengthened his resolve to prove himself as the toughest rapper from Queens. The fallout from this situation led to 50 Cent's name appearing on a court document. This made people start suspecting 50 Cent of being a snitch, allegations supposedly cooked up by Supreme and the Ja Rule team to put a target on 50's back. As the beef between 50 Cent and Ja Rule got hotter, Supreme found himself drawn deeper into the drama. However, when 50 Cent's Ghetto Quran was leaked in 2000, Supreme wasn't too happy about it. The song, part of his debut album Power of the Dollar, called out several street legends, including Supreme. Supreme finally saw 50 as a threat who could destroy everyone. He thought he was out to get them all, him and Ja included.
Explain to me again why this guy was hired to shoot you 9 times.
Well, you was paid because someone, felt like that I would potentially do something to them if they kept going in the direction that they were going.
The situation reached a dramatic climax on May 24, 2000, when 50 Cent was shot 9 times outside his grandmother's house in South Jamaica, Queens. He was in the backseat of a car when the attackers fired at close range, hitting him in the hands, arm, hip, legs, chest, and left cheek. The attack left him with a swollen tongue, a lost wisdom tooth, and a slightly slurred voice. He spent 13 days recovering in the hospital. 50 Cent was rushed to the hospital where he spent 13 days fighting to recover. Somehow he survived, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would stay with him forever. The main suspect in the shooting was Daryl Hamo Baum, a known associate of the Supreme team. But Baum was killed just 3 weeks later, which only deepened the mystery surrounding the whole situation. Many people believe the shooting was a direct response to 50 Cent's controversial track, Ghetto Quran, his beef with Ja Rule, and the disrespect he showed to Kenneth Supreme McGriff, the Supreme team's leader. Despite the near-fatal attack, 50 Cent's determination only grew stronger. He used his recovery time to build his reputation, releasing mixtapes that gained significant attention. His hard work and talent eventually caught the eye of Eminem and Dr. Dre, leading to a record deal with Shady Aftermath. Getting shot 9 times could have easily ended 50 Cent's career, or worse, his life, but instead, it became a turning point. The near-death experience gave him a new sense of purpose and an unstoppable drive to make it in the music industry. After those grueling 13 days in the hospital, 50 Cent faced a tough road to recovery. The physical wounds were serious, but the mental and emotional toll was just as heavy. Still, 50 Cent refused to let the shooting break him. Instead, he turned the pain and anger into fuel for his music, pouring all his raw emotions into his lyrics. Surviving the shooting only boosted 50 Cent's street credit, solidifying his image as a real gangster who had lived through a brutal attack and came out stronger. In 2003, 50 Cent released his debut album, Get Rich or Die Trying, which quickly became a massive hit. Its success wasn't just about the music. Fans were drawn to 50 Cent's story of survival and resilience, viewing him as a symbol of strength and perseverance. However, rumors about 50 Cent's involvement in Daryl Hamo Baum's death persist, especially considering Baum was suspected of being involved in the shooting that nearly killed 50 Cent. Despite the rumors, there is no solid proof that 50 Cent had anything to do with Baum's murder. In fact, it's highly unlikely. Sometimes street stories are just that, stories. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.